Hello and welcome to the InterPlex. Mariana Gómez Soto is a Colombian social anthropologist who also holds a master's degree in holistic sciences from Schumacher College. She has worked extensively with indigenous communities and over the past decade has led several important intercultural initiatives as a member of the Gaia Amazonas Foundation and as a leader of the North Amazon Alliance. She is a lead author of a chapter focused on socio-bioeconomics and connectivity in the Amazon for a recently released assessment report from the Science Panel for the Amazon, and has also spearheaded the formation of the Amazonia Conectada Coalition, which brings together the North Amazon Alliance, the Science Panel for the Amazon, RISE, and Aguas Amazonicas, all very important and impactful organizations with different approaches and areas of expertise in safeguarding the Amazon, but with a shared vision of maintaining terrestrial, biocultural, hydrological, and climatic interconnectivity. Our wide-ranging interdialogue began by speaking about dynamic, context-based frameworks and guidelines for forming and scaling a sustainable, circular bioeconomy in the Amazon, and continued with discussion about vital Amazonian connectivity, the next steps for the North Amazon Alliance and Amazonia Conectada, and the importance of interdisciplinary and intercultural education and collaboration.
So I'd like to start our conversation asking you a bit about bioeconomics. This is something that I've had a bit of familiarity with, many different meetings, conferences. To start with, kind of like a definition for people listening, is there even a definition of what bioeconomics is? You recently were lead author for a chapter on socio-bioeconomics with the Science Panel for the Amazon. Mm-hmm. You've also worked with Gaia Amazonas and the Green Livelihoods Initiative. So maybe you can help to clarify for what bioeconomics is exactly.
Yeah, so maybe to address your question, I would start by saying that bioeconomy has been a term that is gaining a lot of kind of like momentum, and it's like a fashion now. Mm-hmm. And it's a complex concept because it can range for a lot of things. So precisely when we addressed the challenge that the Science Panel for the Amazon invited us to get involved in to write this chapter, we chose to frame it in socio-bioeconomy specifically. Understanding that socio-bio is not, or biocultural is not just the sum of the biological and or ecological and cultural or social elements, like the sum of the two. It's a paradigm, to address the intersection of these two as something interdependent and inseparable. So that's why we used to address socio-bioeconomy in the Amazon, we highlighted the interdependence between the Amazonian people and their territories as the starting point and foundation for socio-bioeconomies. And I think that makes a lot of difference, because there are many many approaches to bioeconomy that are not rooted in that, in that foundation. So that makes it different, because then it is not necessarily context-based, but it can be solutions or answers that come from outside. So when we address the challenge of writing this chapter of the assessment report for the Science Panel for the Amazon that was launched in COP30, we did want to make sure that was the root of this approach of socio-bioeconomies. And then, based on this interdependence between the Amazonian people and their territories, these are circular, multifunctional systems, productive systems that produce, turn into products that range from family economies to products on the global market. They're anyway like a wide range. So we do address systems for like the castaña, the Brazil nut, or acai, but all these systems have to be circular and have to respect the thresholds of the context and the specific territory where they're growing. Otherwise, they become something else that are not the socio-bioeconomies
and when you say
the Amazon needs. And since the motto of the science panel for the Amazon, is the Amazon we want, that's the guiding principle, right? What's the Amazon we want? The Amazon we want is the biodiverse, multicultural Amazon we know, right? And in order for socio-bioeconomies to contribute to the Amazon we want, they do have to have this reference based on context and territory, respecting the thresholds of the ecosystems and the cultures that live there.
And when you say circular socio-bioeconomy, for example, that's, circular bioeconomy is another potentially like trendy word that's thrown out into other contexts. How do you envision, or how does the science panel as well envision a circular bioeconomy? Are we talking about some kind of recycling of products or keeping it within regional bounds where it's just a trade within the Amazon, or what are some of the logistics that are being proposed to make it a circular bioeconomy?
Yeah, well, the science panel does a kind of a diagnosis, right, of what's the state of the Amazon.
Right.
The axis of the report is connectivity. Mm-hmm. So it has to be socio-bioeconomies that contribute to the connectivity of the Amazon. A multi-dimensional connectivity is how we have defined it. So, as I'm saying, it can range from family products and family economies to products in the global market, as long as they respect those thresholds. Mm-hmm. So the panel, by including this chapter in the report, is not establishing how they should be done, but highlighting the good, like the successful solutions that are already being carried out in the Amazon, in order to have references of what are the parameters of this concept and how it should be applied in the Amazon. And in that sense, each chapter, not only the one on socio-bioeconomies, but each of the 8 chapters in the report has a set of call to actions associated to the topic. So in our case, we have 5 call to actions about specific topics, like, for example, new Amazonian marketable products. Mm-hmm. Promoting that this is a way of securing livelihoods in the Amazon. And there's specific examples associated to that topic. We have one on just benefits, the distribution of just benefits, and examples of initiatives in the Amazon that are being able to have a fair distribution of benefits around socio-bioeconomies. There's another one on making all the value chain sustainable. Mm-hmm. And there's examples. So you'll see that each chapter tries to, since it's a report that is oriented to decision makers, mm-hmm. then the call to actions are very useful because they have a section on what's like the problem, how to address that topic, what are some of the guiding principles for solutions, and some examples. Mm-hmm. So it's very concrete and straightforward. And regarding your question about how can they be circular, so for example, since acai, for example, has become a product on the global market, and in some places there is the risk it is crossing the territorial thresholds for well-being. Mm-hmm. So in the report and in the chapter and in some of the call to actions, we share, for example, cases in which the subproducts of the acai have been used for creating cardboard and other materials. Mm-hmm. And so that's the ingredient of circularity. And circular economy has also become a thing. Mm-hmm. So there's one way of addressing it, and it's like everything comes back, right? But the food plots in the Amazon have a circularity principle. Mm. So it's embedded in their systems. Right. So also we address the circularity in the concept, not making sure that we're not only addressing the way the circular economy is being presented, but the cultural foundations of that circularity that is inherent to the Amazonian cultures.
What about the actual trade networks that you're imagining? Is that based on anything traditional, or is it some blend of the urban Amazon with the traditional trade networks?
We highlight that the best way of promoting socio-bioeconomies is bringing together the local and traditional knowledge systems with technical and scientific knowledge. Making sure that the combination of these two continues respecting the thresholds, but that also solves bottlenecks that are very difficult to solve in the Amazonian context regarding transport, transformation, packaging, almacenamiento, I don't know how to say that in English. The way you keep,
storage.
Yeah, exactly. And so, because what we analyze in the chapter is that there has been very little investment in these socio-bioeconomies. The investments in the region have been conducted to commodities more than socio-bioeconomies. So we think that the financial scheme should also change and direct more funds to supporting and addressing these bottlenecks that socio-bioeconomies have in order to solve the challenges that make these systems unable to thrive. And in that sense, one of the call to actions is on distributive hubs, socio-bioeconomy hubs in the Amazon.
Decentralized.
Decentralized, distributed. And so the author from that call to action, because the call to actions have different authors aside from us, but we worked with them, so there's a coherence. And the author there highlights and analyzes a range of hubs and of different sizes, and that interact with local, regional, and global markets in different scales. And so it's a pretty broad approach, but always coming back to the principles.
Some sort of simple guiding principles that can help scale up the network. Yeah, that's what I wonder, because I speak. There seems to be a sort of decoherence in a lot of ways how it's being approached, not with what you're talking about, but outside through different institutions. And also I speak to people in academics or people working in complex systems, and bioeconomics is seen as a very difficult challenge to organize because, for example, the diversity of products, the diversity of cultures, the diversity of ecosystems. So really, when I speak in that way, in a systems approach to things, the only real way that seems to work is a more decentralized approach with more simple rules that can help self-organize and scale up the system. And that's what, when reading that chapter and when thinking about what the science panel of the Amazon is doing, that's one that seems to take that view. But it's also very difficult to predict, to forecast. So how is this being modeled? How I mean, conceptually it makes a lot of sense, but how can there be any way of knowing what is actually going to happen by having support for this kind of an approach?
Well, I think it's different. It's difficult to and kind of foresee what's going to happen in the planet at this moment, where there's so much uncertainty and so many changes. The tendencies are, don't you feel that tendencies that we felt where we were heading towards, like a rights-based approach, which is another of the founding principles of socio-bioeconomies, right? That they have a right-based approach, and they strengthen collective decision-making and local organizations and their structures. But suddenly the world is not guided by a rights-based approach, right? Suddenly. And things that were not into our ethical parameters are some suddenly kind of normalized. So I think the tendencies are very tricky in this moment. But I do think that what drives change in the Amazon are the local solutions. And that beyond the global tendencies, there are strong-rooted initiatives that are being carried out by local people and in collaboration with civil society organizations, sometimes governments or even private sector, and that we don't know of. That's why these call to actions are really nice. So what I was going to say is that I think that what happens in the Amazon, not only regarding socio-bioeconomies, but in general, also is going to depend a lot on this year's elections in Colombia and Brazil. Because Petro and Lula have been important players in, como creating tendencies for conservation and protection in the past years. And especially Brazil. If Brazil goes back to follows the right tendency, the global right tendency, it's probably going to, again, benefit commodities and agroindustry much more than protecting, rights and indigenous territories and forest protection, as it has been with the Lula's government.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the tendencies in the Amazon are much tied to the elections this year.
Yeah. Speaking of that, in Brazil, I've spoken to people at different institutions that are also involved in bioeconomics. It makes me want to ask also, how do you determine what products are worth supporting and what kind of support is needed? Because I spoke to, for example, people at FINEP in Brazil, and there seems to be a lot of focus on biopharmaceuticals in terms of bioeconomics. What is the general approach to identifying and commercializing, or at least, transforming products into a market that can be supported, even if it's just regionally, in terms of storage and processing and things like that? With such a diversity, how are products actually identified? Is it for their commercial value? Is it for their cultural value or some added value? What is the determining framework for that?
I would answer the question by saying that the science panel for the Amazon, by including a chapter on socio-bioeconomy in the report, is not an organization that is going to support socio-bioeconomies.
Right. Beyond
creating a scientific framework to address them, because that's not what the science panel does.
Mm-hmm.
They create knowledge or consolidate knowledge around the Amazon more. And so, the purpose of the chapter is not selecting socio-bioeconomies to support them, but create a framework clear enough that the ones that contribute to the Amazon we want can be supported or easily characterized. So again, going back to the principles in the chapter, added value is an important element when especially going into regional and global markets, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But we also highlight the importance of dynamizing local markets. People buy and sell things between them, and it's strengthening that is key in order to have a healthy Amazon instead of bringing everything from outside. So it depends, socio-bioeconomies are not only the nice Brazil nuts that we can buy in a delicatessen or something and know who harvested the nuts. Not only that, it's also, creating the conditions for people to be able to exchange fish in their daily life for a broom they did from some, natural fiber found in the area.
Mm-hmm.
I prefer kind of not to answer that question because I think it has to be multidimensional and multi-scale in order to correspond to the and be loyal to the particularities of the region and also to the challenges of the transport distances, conditions, but I do think that when selecting what socio-bioeconomy initiative to support, one could use the chapter as to find guiding principles to identify if they, they meet those characteristics, like they have the initiative has a right-based approach. It benefits collective decisions, fair distribution of benefits. If the productive system is multifunctional and respects the thresholds of the ecosystem and the people, and if it's related or it is embedded in the local knowledge systems, or the cultural practices, or if it's something completely foreign, right?
No, I happen to agree, because to me it seems like a lot outside of what you've been working on are focused more on specific products and a sort of centralized mandate of how to make those products work on a global market, instead of something that's more of a framework that can then be adaptive and scale based on the diversity of the region, many different kinds of diversity.
Yeah, and I think it's not so much about what, like Brazil nuts, acai, but how. Because even Brazil nuts, there's in the report we found some data around the percentage. It's about 4% of the price of the Brazil nut that stays in the hands of the collectors. Right. So it's not so much about what, but how.
Right. Great. So if there are any recommendations for those that are trying to take more, let's say, explicit action on commercializing products, or even governments as well that want to get involved, or supports, or other civil society organizations, what are some of the recommendations for how to help scale up socio-bioeconomy for the Amazon?
Yeah, I think there has to be a case-by-case approach, context-based, and again, looking for those guidelines. Is this, based on the intricate relationship between the people and their territories? Is this respecting the thresholds? Is this, benefiting collective decision making? Benefit sharing. So I think again, it has to be a context-based approach and case by case, because each value chain, each product is going to have, in the chapter we do kind of map common bottlenecks, but how to solve them is going to be depending a lot on the context. So
great. That's great. Well, you launched this assessment report from the science panel, was launched at COP30, which was held in Belém. Another initiative that you've been instrumental in putting together was also launched at COP30, if I understand, Amazonia Conectada, which brings together 4 large groups. You can explain a bit better, but it's the North Amazon Alliance, Aguas Amazónicas, RAIS, and the Science Panel for the Amazon. Can you explain a little bit about how this came together and what your role has been in this initiative?
Yeah, I've been involved in coordinating the North Amazon Alliance. It was set up in 2017 formally as a regional alliance of 9 civil society organizations in 5 Amazonian countries that work together around safeguarding ecosystem and sociocultural connectivity. So the mission of the North Amazon Alliance, which I have been involved now for almost a decade, is the connectivity. And 10 years ago, when we started speaking about connectivity, it was something, it wasn't so common. There wasn't a lot of language. There's an ecological approach to connectivity, like of connectivity science regarding connectivity of ecosystems, but it didn't address the social and cultural dimensions so much. And so that's what the North Amazon Alliance has been working on all these years. So CBD has included connectivity in the new global biodiversity targets, regional agreements in the Amazon speak about connectivity now. And so in preparation of this COP30 of climate change, And since COP16 of biodiversity last year here in Colombia, in Cali, we started identifying other networks and other actors in the region that were using the concept and including it as part of their approach. And so we started speaking up with the Science Panel for the Amazon since 2024 in Cali. And in Cali, we launched the first phase of an analysis that we carried out the North Amazon Alliance and RISC, that is the georeferenced information network for the Amazon. And we carried out an analysis together that did a first analysis of what's the state of the connectivity, ecological-terrestrial connectivity in the Amazon. Because that's what we have the technology and the methodology, the capacity to do for now. But it's the starting point to understand where are the well-connected chunks of forest. And so that first phase we launched in Cali in COP16, and it takes data from 1985 to 2022. And then since that was the first snippet of like what's the state of the connectivity at a pan-Amazonian level, RISC and the North Amazon Alliance decided to carry out a second phase of the analysis for COP30. And so we extended the period to 2023 because we already had the satellite data to do so. But we also included other elements, like for example, the first phase for COP16 only took a representative species, a large mammal with a long distribution range. And for the second phase we launched in COP30, we did a multi-species analysis, for example, with different sizes and range of movements for mammals.
Which species, can I ask? Do you remember?
There's
several.
There's several, ranging from a jaguar to a smaller mammal, especially applied for the Andean Amazon transition.
Cool.
And we also included new variables, like for example, the correlation between infrastructure development and the loss of connectivity. And so that we were preparing this second phase to be launched in COP30, and at the same time we continued speaking with the Science Panel for the Amazon, and we were already 2 regional networks working around connectivity analysis. So, and we also started conversations with the Alianza Aguas Amazónicas, that is an alliance that works in like rivers and water and hydrology in the Amazon, and they do a lot of citizen science, and they collect data with the fishermen all along the basin. So they have a lot of information regarding water connectivity, hydrological connectivity in the Amazon.
Monitoring, if I can ask, water quality,
and fish distribution, and for example, the dorado is like the salmon, and I think they are one of the animals that migrates more, like the longest distance
in the world.
In the world. So the dorado is an indicator species, and so we thought we are 4 regional networks working in the Amazon using a connectivity approach. We are producing connectivity related information that we're going to launch in COP30, the 4 of us. If we don't go together, we're going to confuse people, right? So because we are conducting analysis to inform decision making in COP, so it's better to do it together, and each alliance can share their own information with a joint complementary approach. So that's why we got together. So the Science Panel for the Amazon, as I had said before, developed the assessment report with a connectivity. The connectivity is the guideline, and it has 8 chapters of different it addresses different dimensions of connectivity. We were doing the connectivity analysis along with RISC regarding terrestrial ecological connectivity, and Alianza Aguas Amazónicas had the data regarding water connectivity. So everything was very complementary. So that's why we set up what we call a toolkit for informed decision making with a connectivity approach in the Amazon. And it's a portal, a website where you can come in and so something very important is that we came together and we built a common understanding of connectivity. Connectivity is still a concept that can be very esoteric and misunderstood. And so the four networks came together, and the first thing you find in the website is the common approach to connectivity, a multi-dimensional connectivity. Mm-hmm. And then you can go into each of the reports of the information developed by each of these four networks regarding connectivity or with a connectivity approach for COP30, and unload the four reports. And so it's like it brings them together, but each alliance still has its own, set of information. Yeah, but it's complementary. Exactly, but it's complementary. And when building this common approach to connectivity, we also made or developed a joint two-pager with what's at risk if the connectivity is lost, right, to leverage the sense of urgency. What are some recommendations, general recommendations for decision making regarding connectivity, and a call to action. So all that is found in that website, and we held 2 side events in COP30 where we launched the toolkit together.
The four.
The four.
It's really great. Yeah, it makes me think a few years ago, something that brought us into conversation and with other people at Gaia and the North Amazon Alliance was this sort of hydrological-terrestrial interconnectivity in the Amazon. And I imagine that's part of the inspiration for this as well. So, and also the cultural aspects. So something that I think Gaia and the North Amazon Alliance were presenting in 2023 at the UN Water Conference, is that what it was the concept of flowing rivers, which the indigenous peoples have understood for a long time. And now in the scientific realm, it's more biotic pump theory and some complex biophysics related to these things. But yeah, that interconnection between hydrological and regional precipitation patterns, vegetation, transpiration, all these things, I imagine all fits into the concept that you're talking about. These 4 different groups that have their specialized areas, they all work together in this sort of interconnection.
Yeah, definitely. Well, the North Amazon Alliance has been speaking about connectivity as the most successful strategy to maintain what we call the life-sustaining systems that the Amazon regulates. Right. One of them is the atmospheric water cycle. And so it happens to be that one of the co-chairs of the science panel for the Amazon is Carlos Nobre, who is the climatologist from Brazil that has been working around this concept of the flying rivers. And so it all came together, it all came together. And as one can imagine, and based on the biotic pump, part of the water cycle in the Amazon are the atmospheric and the terrestrial rivers that many of them are born in the Andes and take the waters full of sediments from the Andes back to the ocean. And so it's nice that the 4 networks that come together on connectivity kind of complete that system, each one addressing a part that's why I highlight so much the perspective of complementarity of the work we carried out.
No, it's very it's rather beautiful and ambitious, but it's necessary, all of those components working together. Yeah, because I wrote about this and spoke to different people at Gaia about it, but losing some of the terrestrial connectivity will then impact the hydrological connectivity as well.
That's why we started with our technological capacities, because we had to develop a new methodology to measure forest connectivity. That is very interesting because it is based in the the movement of species that have a wide range of movement, but also in an omnidirectional direction, which is very important. Because sometimes connectivity can be measured between, like, the distance between protected areas, and of course that is useful to justify the creation of new protected areas, but it's not really, it has the bias in the sense that it assumes that within the protected areas connectivity, forest connectivity is maintained, but not necessarily. So this methodology we developed is a much more I don't know how to say this, but maybe it addresses the state of the ecosystems beyond the protective figures on paper. So that's why we started, because what you're saying is very important, because that's why we started by developing this analysis based on the state of the connectivity of terrestrial forests, because that's the distribution and the mobilization of humidity from the Andes from the Amazon to the Andes depends entirely in the states of the healthy forests that are able to absorb and release moisture from the atmosphere back to the atmosphere through evapotranspiration. So that's why it's very complementary to the work that the Alianza Aguas Amazónicas carries out, that foresees the connectivity of the terrestrial rivers across the Amazon, that most of them run from west to east.
Right.
And the atmospheric rivers, most of them the mobilization of the atmospheric rivers is from the Atlantic towards the Andes, from east to west. And most of the terrestrial rivers, of course, there are some that are born in the Amazon, but the ones that come from the Andes, most of them run from west to east and discharge their waters in the Atlantic.
And those are the ones that have most of the
Sediments.
that then replenish the forest. So
and also that replenish the calcium deposits in the delta of the Amazon.
Which depend on
And the carbon deposits, which are very important.
So it's great. So I guess the next thing I want to ask about is what is the for the North Amazon Alliance and for the Amazonia Conectada, what are the next steps? What's the vision going forward? How is it going to be possible to present this sort of complex, interconnected vision to policymakers and to a wider public? Because, as you know, much of the policy to this point has been much more segmented and directed, at specific things. But to look at the connectivity is the only way to really protect the Amazon. What would be the steps of this large alliance that you've helped to form to communicate that?
Yeah, well, this coalition of 4 regional networks or alliances was born in the frame of the preparation of COP30. That's what happened, at least has happened in the past 2 years, I think, in our countries, because we have been the hosts of these COPs, and that it has mobilized a lot of things as if the world was going to end in the COP. And of course, we had a debriefing meeting with the 4 networks after COP30 in Belém at the beginning of December, mid-December. And we all agreed that there is a lot of projection and potential to continue giving life to this coalition around connectivity. And actually, we already have some meetings in the following weeks to come back to this question. We don't have a completely clear plan, but we all do agree that it's worth keeping this coalition alive. And I think that because COPs create this feeling that, it's like after COP there's a like if you think until COP, I think that the immediate collective challenge we will address is amplifying the outreach of this information beyond COP30. You know, it's like the information is still relevant,
For sure.
even if COP30 already passed, and regardless of the results of COP30. So I think that's an effort we're going to be doing together, amplifying the outreach of the information we created and that was launched in COP.
Mm-hmm.
And doing that together makes a lot of sense. And the North Amazon Alliance also has plans to, we're the next phase of the work that the North Amazon Alliance carries out is working in strategic connectivity territories. We have identified 8 large landscapes where connectivity is key across the geography of work of the Alliance, that is the region north of the Amazon River. And we are going to be diving into that work at a landscape level, based on that vision, regional vision we have created, and specifically starting by 3 prioritized landscapes that are the Andes Amazon transition between Ecuador and Peru,
Okay.
The Putumayo Basin, a biocultural corridor, and the Yanomami-Yecuana landscape between Venezuela and Brazil border.
Very diverse landscapes.
Yeah, and also the region with the members of the Alliance that work in Amapá and Pará, the region around the mosaic, the North Amazon mosaic, towards the delta, because we've seen also that is the area of the Amazon that most moisture traps because of the closeness to the Atlantic.
Makes sense.
So yeah, so we have strategic planning sessions, and we're starting to work in these pilots to work at a landscape level with this regional vision we have been creating for 10 years now.
Will the Alliance be working with RISE with this as well? I know there's quite close ties between the two.
Yeah, 6 of the 9 members of ANA are members of RISC, of the North Amazon Alliance are members of RISC. And again, the approach is very complementary because RISC develops all the geo-referenced information, and the North Amazon Alliance works more around capacity building, exchanges of knowledge, regional knowledge management, joint advocacy, and in these specific landscapes. So it's very complementary, and we are interested in making these efforts we have done with the analysis of connectivity that we have developed jointly between the 2 networks to become a line of analysis around connectivity. Well, for that we need support and funds and everything, but it makes sense for both of the networks.
Absolutely. And then there will be plenty of opportunity to bring in people from the science panel and Aguas Amazonicas as well as you're advancing this. Do they have any initiatives that they're working on that you're aware of that maybe the Alliance will be able to participate in, kind of in a complementary manner?
Well, I think that's something that is common for the 4 networks is that the science panel for the Amazon has a strategic planning, is going to enter a strategic planning phase as well in the next months, as well as the North Amazon Alliance, and I think that RISC is in a similar moment as well. And so definitely the joint work we have carried out in the past year will inform that planning, that strategic planning for the 4 networks. Sure. I hope so.
The connections have been made. There's a lot more experience working together, so I can imagine that organizing. Well, it's tough to not ask, as you're mentioning the COP30. I'd love your perspective. You can share whatever you like about your experience, the positives, maybe the negatives of an event like this, whatever you feel comfortable sharing. But I talked to many people that attended the event, and I get a lot of mixed messages. You accomplished a lot there and were able to launch it, but also you're mentioning things like sort of the people get caught up in it, the world almost ends there when the work has to continue afterwards. What are some of your thoughts and maybe recommendations as well for how these frameworks can maybe be more broadly applied or appreciated outside of the COP framework?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a tendency, like a mistaken tendency to kind of evaluate the results of a COP. There's many things there, you know, and of course there is the political results regarding the agreements between countries are a failure, and we can read about that in thousands of papers,
Sure.
right? And that is the purpose of the COPs. So there's something wrong, you know, in the format, which is not leading to change in policy frameworks. Nonetheless, I would say, from my experience of COPs previously and in the past 2 years, that, and obviously I'm saying this because of my bias as a Latin American, but I really feel that COP16 in Cali and COP30 in Belém had a very special and unique social and cultural component that is kind of unique and for COPs. COPs for me were in the past a place where very technical, political people were discussing things, and I really feel that Cali and Belém gave it another sense, you know, and that should inform policy. It hasn't yet. It didn't. It is very hermetic, so it doesn't percolate into the decisions. That's a failure. Nonetheless, just the fact of being able to, be in contact with such a diverse public, that was like just take into account a COP in Montreal versus a COP in Cali. Colombia as a host took biodiversity to the streets. People were participating, discussing, sharing ideas, exchanging about, life in all its forms. And I hadn't seen that before. It is something isolated. In Cali, it wasn't. The whole city was vibrating around biodiversity. And in Belém, the negotiations are different between biodiversity and climate change. But I would say Belém also gave the climate negotiations a very special, just the fact that the people could go there, the marches, the social and cultural participation was very rich. And I would hope, we don't know because of the tendencies of the world, maybe that's going to make the COPs even more hermetic and closed. But I would say that Cali and Belém are references of a much social, cultural, participative spaces that could be of reference for the future.
It seems like this sort of dynamic, collaborative atmosphere that you're describing went at the institutional level a bit more as well with Cali and Belém, at least in your case, where these alliances were able to come together. At least it was maybe the motor, the driver to bring people together to then put something on the table at these Latin-based COPs.
Yeah, and it also has to do with a lot of it with momentum and realizing that it has been a historical episode to have the two environmental discussions that are more relevant for the planet in two Amazonian countries in 2 years in a row. And that's not going to happen again, at least in decades. So it's maybe like a result of how are we going to take advantage and make the best use of this historical momentum for our countries and for the work we do in the Amazon. And it's like, together we do more, let's come together. Maybe if the COP was in, I don't know, Eastern Europe, we wouldn't have that drive. And it's like, it's happening in our house. Like, how can we honor that? And I think that did influenced the way civil society organizations in the Amazonian countries got involved.
Certainly seems like it. Great. I think I'll shift gears a little bit, maybe to close out our conversation, a little bit more personal background. Something that we share an interest in is sort of interdisciplinary, intercultural education, collaboration. You've shared with me about some of your educational background. I was at Schumacher College. How would you think your sort of perspective and educational background has led you into the kind of work that we're discussing right now?
Well, thanks for the question. Well, I started doing a minor in anthropology. Well, I don't know, but I think that what led me to choose that career was that I had the opportunity to travel a lot around Colombia and to have contact and be involved in different contexts. And Colombia is a super diverse country. So, like, seeing myself as a bridge between contexts has always been something in me. And I think that also having the opportunity to be raised as bilingual in a Latin American context is also something that immediately gives you like a bridge kind of quality, right? And so I think that informed the way I addressed anthropology when I started the minor in anthropology. And because I had also been working in tourism when I was a teenager and in experiential education and environmental education with children was my first job. I also started biology. So I did the two minors like in parallel, and I also included some courses of geography. So the college I went to here in Bogota had this interdisciplinary approach and gave the student the possibility of, not staying only in their own career. And then, but anyway, studying biology and anthropology, for my surprise, was like two universes. Even if the format of the university allowed you to do two careers, it was like, I thought the blend was going to be very natural, and it was like, no, like studying the digestive system of a jellyfish, and like things that were complete. And so I had to weave those two together, and I think that doing fieldwork, working in the Amazons, living with indigenous communities made them come together. And I did a master's in social anthropology, and my thesis was about the indigenous productive systems of the Ticuna and action. So that involved, of course, the social, cultural, and economic aspects of using the natural resources and managing the forest. And then that's why I think that led me to studying holistic science in Schumacher College. That was when I was finally at ease and said, okay, there's a science that does not break things down, but that honors the interconnectedness, interrelation between the things. And so I did a master's on holistic sciences in Schumacher College, and in 2014-15, so a little bit more than 10 years ago.
Sure.
And I think that since then, and because I ended up working at Gaia Amazonas and setting up the North Amazon Alliance, I would say that every day I apply what I learned at Schumacher in that holistic sciences MSc. And especially because it is the foundation of the MSc on holistic sciences is the theory of Gaia, which addresses the planet Earth as the largest living system that we know of, and that it has a purpose that is sustaining life. That it's why the planet has been able to maintain such specific parameters for the life to be possible, and that it has the capacity to self-regulate. So I think that informs what I do every day still.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
No, thank
Mariana.
you.
I really appreciate this time and
Thank
knowledge.
you.
I wish you the best of luck with the North Amazon Alliance.
Thank you.
very interested in helping to promote a lot of what you're doing too. I think people understanding this wider holistic scientific vision that you're talking about is very important as well. I think there are ways to view it in less of a reductionist manner, and you're clearly working on that. So
yeah,
thank you very much.
Yeah, I think that if we continue to address not only the planet but our existence in a fragmented way, we are going to get lost in the parts. Yeah.
Totally agree.
So let's hope so.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this interdialogue. You can subscribe to be notified of future episodes and by following us on our social media channels at the InterPlex. Visit our website, theinterplex.org, for more interdisciplinary and intercultural content and to join our growing collaborative community.